Hi, this is Tony Kent, and this is another episode of Tony Kent Writes and Cross-Examines. Today, I will be cross-examining from my kitchen somebody who is in the lovely sunny weather I can see behind her, and hopefully you can too, down in Brighton. And that somebody is ELLY GRIFFITHS. ELLY, as I'm sure you all know, is the best-selling author of the Ruth Galloway series. You can see at the bottom that began with The Crossing Place, and most recently the 12th book in the series was The Lantern Man, which was released in February. She's also the author of the Stephens and Mephisto series and a number of standalones and children's books, and we're going to hear about all of them somehow in a 15-minute slot. ELLY, how are you doing?
I'm okay, Tony. Thanks so much for inviting me on here. Yeah, I'm well. As you were saying, I'm in my garden. I've got a writing shed in the top of the garden, which is really great place to escape to. So that's where I am at the moment. Yeah, and a lovely day. I can just about see the sea from it, which is really nice.
And in your shed, are you able to tell everybody, no, it's too close, nobody else is allowed in, and lock them out and just lock yourself down?
What a shame. I was just saying to you earlier, my husband thought that lockdown would be a really good opportunity to deep clean the house, which is a great idea, but unfortunately I have to say to him every morning, oh, what a shame, I've got a book to write, and then I beetle off up to the shed, and I've got my cat is usually with me, but then it's just us two, and so I can hide in here. I say hide, but obviously I'm working hard.
No, well, and you really are working hard, because you say it's an excuse that you've got a book to write, but we just had a conversation before we started about the books that are coming out and that have come out. And this year alone, you've released The Lantern Man, which was in February, which is when I saw you last in Brighton. You've then released just this month, because we're still in May, although this will probably go out in June. Actually, I like to pretend that we are recording this on the day it goes out, even though I'm always wearing the same clothes. So yes, you've just released last month in May, which is now, a book in the A Girl Called Justice series, which is your children's series, and that was The Smuggler's Secret.
Yes,
and
right.
In October, you're releasing a standalone book.
Yes.
And again, that's sorry, I've got my note of that. The Postscript Murders.
The Postscript Murders, yeah.
I've used that almost as a line dividing the other things in my notes. That's why I couldn't find it straight away. But the Postscript Murders. So when you say that you're using writing as an excuse, I mean, how fast are you writing when you're really writing?
Well, I'm not a super fast writer, but I do try the usual thing that I think a lot of writers do. I do try and do at least 1,000 words a day. My books aren't very, very long. They're about 90, the adult books are about 90,000 words long. So, you think that in 90 days I'll have a book. I only really do one draft, so I don't really change it that much as I go through. So I finish the draft and I send it to my editor. I never show it to anyone else. So I suppose it's, but I'm making it sound, like it's seamless, but it isn't. There are some days when I'm in my little shed with my cat, not doing anything much, and not so. You know what it's like. It's not always so easy, but I do try. I try and do 1,000 words a day, and keep doing a different 1,000 words. Yeah,
but it seems to be working, because they're flying out. I think. Did you tell me you're up to 21 books now?
I think it's 25. I counted that the other day, but I failed maths at school, so it might not be. So 25, but that includes, you're right though, Tony, you obviously can do maths, because it's 21 ELLY GRIFFITHS books, but 4 under my own name, which is, as you know, Domenica De Rosa. So as Domenica De Rosa, I wrote 4 kind of standalone, kind of women's fiction-y type books before I wrote the ELLY GRIFFITHS books. So 25 altogether, yeah.
That was beginning. I think your first book was The Italian Quarter, was it?
That's right, yeah. And it was Italian Quarter, is written as Domenica De Rosa, and it's kind of about my dad's life as an Italian immigrant, and he lived in the Italian Quarter of London, which I think you know, don't you? Clark.
I do. Yes, I lived there myself for a good few years.
Yeah, so very fascinating, because it's still full of Italian restaurants and delicatessens. But when my dad
mainly why I lived there, I decided it was a good time to get fat.
But it is, yeah. So it's but when my dad was there, it was Italian was the language spoken. There was an Italian hospital, Italian school. But when the war came, all those Italian immigrants were rounded up, collar the lot, Churchill said, and they were sent to prisoner of war camps, and that's what happened to my dad. So that's what my first book's about.
Right. And then you wrote, I think, you have 4 books, 4 standalones before you started the Ruth Galloway series with The Crossing Place.
Yeah, that's right.
And that, as I think anyone who's read it, and I'm sure everyone's read at least one, and if you have only read one, why? You should be reading the rest. You set that in Norfolk. Now, you are not born and bred in Brighton, but you are, to all intents and purposes, born and bred in Brighton. Yeah. Why Norfolk?
Well, really, it was because so I've lived in Brighton since I was 5. I was born in London, actually. But partly because, so when I was a child, I used to spend holidays in Norfolk because my aunt Marge lived there, and she has a boat. She's just moved, actually, but she had a boat moored at Reedham, and I just had lovely memories of being on Marge's boat. She'd have one hand on the tiller and one on a gin and tonic. And she used to tell these great ghost stories.
Something to aspire to.
Yeah, she really is. Gin and tonic slimming. Never forget that. That's quite good. So she sort of, I suppose in my head, Norfolk was already linked to stories and to being a bit spooky as well. But also it's because my main character, Ruth, is an archaeologist. And Norfolk is full of archaeology. I mean, really, the oldest human footprints outside Africa were found Haysborough, Norfolk, and my husband's an archaeologist.
I didn't know that.
And, Norfolk is just full of bodies, I'm afraid. But I mean, some of them have been there thousands of years. But
some of them in your books haven't.
No, but you're never going to run out of bodies in Norfolk. That's the thing, really. And the first thing that really made me want to write about Norfolk was Andy mentioning that marshland, so that Norfolk marshland, prehistoric people thought it was sacred because marshland's neither land nor sea.
Right.
They thought it was a link to the afterlife, neither land nor sea, neither life nor death. And that's why you find those so-called bog bodies. And that's what gave me the idea for the crossing places.
That's fantastic. It certainly, as an idea, it was a productive one, wasn't it? Because the Lantern Man this year was the 12th in the series.
Yeah, and that too is really based on a Norfolk legend. It starts off. Ruth's actually in a different place at the beginning of the book, but it's not long before she hears the lure of Norfolk and Nelson, the policeman. And it's based on a Norfolk legend of these, and I think other places have similar legends of these masked figures called lantern men, and you see them at night on the marches, and you just see the sort of hazy light of the lantern, but don't follow it because it will lead you to hell.
That's very interesting. That reminds me of some Irish legends that I grew up with too.
Yes, lots of those Irish legends are very. The Cocher Bower, that's a very good Irish legend. I think I've used that in a book, but yes, it's a lot. But basically, don't follow the mysterious person with a light. That's all we need.
No, stay well away. Stay well away from them.
Stay on the path.
Well, if you can stay on the path I mean, it is a wonderful place, Norfolk, isn't it? I mean, I've spent some time up there in Norwich Crown Court, and just sort of in and around, and I think is it Wisbeach that's up there, and Cromer, and I've been to a few of those places, and it's an incredible. It's completely flat, isn't it? It's dead flat, and all of the water, and as you say, the boglands and obviously the canals. It's a very interesting place to be able to set a series.
It is interesting. I remember being in America once, and somebody said to me, in Kansas, you can see someone running away for days. And I thought, well, maybe not days in Norfolk, but there is something about those sort of flat landscapes, isn't it? That is both, you've got the wonderfully huge sky in Norfolk, and then you do have this flat expanse of land. But as you were saying, Tony, the places that you've been to, there's a lot of variety in Norfolk. You've got Norwich, is a beautiful old city, packed full of. There's even a place called Tombland.
I stayed in Tombland. There's a little hotel in Tombland. Whenever I go to court, there is where I stay. It's
just wonderful. Of course, CJ Sampson's written an amazing book about Norwich called Tombland. So you've got that, but you've also got places that are quite deprived, and places that have seen a lot of changes. You've got the sort of seaside places like Cromer with a pier and that sort of whole seaside glamour. So you've got everything really in Norfolk. I have to say it's a good place to write about.
It is, and you mentioned a pier, and the pier I think brings me round to the second series, which is the Stephens and Mephisto series. I feel almost professional, because as great as Norfolk it is, you are a Brighton girl, and your other series is set in Brighton, but not Brighton today, Brighton the 50s and the 60s. Now, I didn't know about this series until I started researching for this interview. I've got quite a lot of the Ruth Galloway books, so I have none of these, but I'll be ordering them now because I love something like this, something sort of historical, but not quite, but not exactly. It's close enough that there's still a collective memory of it, but still it's far enough back that it's very different. So tell us about that.
So the series starts in 1950, and it starts with a police officer in Brighton finding a body of a woman cut into three. And it reminds him of that old magician's trick where there's a woman, and I'm afraid it almost always is a woman, goes into a cabinet and magician sort of puts the swords through and pulls out the middle bit. I don't know why I'm doing the gestures, you can't see it. But anyhow,
I can just about see it.
That trick is called the ZIG-ZAG Girl. And so it reminds this policeman of a magician that he served with in the war. So that's that story. And it's set in 1950s Brighton, but in the last days of sort of musical, last days of variety. And I'm particularly interested in that because my granddad was in variety. He was a comedian. He served in the First World War and didn't really talk about that very much. But one thing he once said that I never forgot was he said, after everything I saw in the First World War, and all this was before he was sort of 22, he said, there's only one job I could do after that, and that's to become a comedian. And that's what he did. He was called Dennis Laws, and he was, you know, in variety, and he just traveled around the country.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write about that world. So the first book is The ZIG-ZAG Girl, and it's about that world. It's also about another really interesting thing that I'm sure you've heard about, Tony, because I know you're interested in history. And so there was a magician that my granddad knew quite well called Jasper Maskelyne. And in the Second World War, he was asked by Churchill to put together a group of magicians, and they called themselves the Magic Gang. And their job was to use stage magic in the war effort.
Yeah.
So, you know, camouflage, and they were meant to have made the Suez Canal disappear, and they made all these dummy tanks and dummy soldiers. They used light shows. And things. So that is the.
They had the drone, not the drones. They had the kites, didn't they? At D-Day, they put all the kites up in Calais, so they thought that they were coming towards Calais. Pardon me.
And I think as they were based in North Africa, and I think they really did manage, you know, to make Rommel think that we had many more, you know, soldiers and armor and tanks than actually were there. And even in Norfolk, because I've written a book about the deserted airfields, the so-called ghost fields, but they had the shadow fields that from the air looked exactly like an aerodrome. So there was a lot of it going on. So that is the backstory to my magician, Max Mephisto.
I'm going to have to read all of these now because that's completely fascinated me. Honestly, I love the sound of that. It's right up my street.
I just think it might be up your street.
I think it really is. I don't want to move on from it, but I have to move on because we've only got 2.5 minutes left, and I want to talk about quickly the children's story, which is The Smuggler's Secret. Now that's out now, and people should be buying that for their 8-year-old, should they not?
They so should, Tony. Thank you. Or really for anyone who likes a good murder, because it's a lot of adults have read it and say they like it, and to be honest, it's just really a short Ruth book. So, but this is quite dear to me because it's about a girl called Justice who's sent away to boarding school in the 1930s, driving there. So I'm doing the gestures again. She's driving there, and she says to the taxi driver, "Do you come here often?" And he says, "No." But I don't know why he's talking like that. But he says, "No, but my brother came here last week." And she says, "Oh, is he a taxi driver?" And he says, "No, he's the undertaker." So there's been a murder at the school, and Justice gets to solve it. And I just hope these books they're sort of kind of old-fashioned locked room murders. So the first one is called A Girl Called Justice, and as you say, the one that's out this month is called Justice and the Smuggler's Secret. So
my niece is just 9 years old and 9.5 and loves anything like that. So I think
she'd love it, Tony.
She's getting them tomorrow. I'm going to Amazon them now.
You're very good. You're a good friend. Thank you.
But honestly, I think she'll absolutely love them. Right, we're now very, very quickly, because we've got 1 minute left. You've got a standalone, The Postscript Murders, coming out in October. What's the quickest description you can give us of that?
Elderly lady living in a retirement home is really a murder consultant. When she's killed, who killed her?
Fantastic. That's it. Sold straight away. I have to say, you sell your books better than anyone I've ever met. You've made me want to buy all of them. If I could do that half as well, I might sell twice as many books.
Oh, come on,
we need to start doing it. Right, we've got 35 seconds left. We haven't even got time to talk about Bruce Springsteen somehow. Because you're the only person I know who is as fanatical about Bruce Springsteen as I am. And unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about it. We might have to do another one of these and just talk about his back catalogue.
Yes, I'm sick of sitting around here trying to write this book.
Fantastic lyric. Right, we're nearly done. Thank you very much, Ellie Griffiths, for coming along, for giving us your time in the morning. And all I can say is thank you very much. Good luck with all of the many books that are out there.
And you, and congrats on Power Play.